Pick a card, any card. Today I'm going to show you how to build a 4S lithium-ion battery for your FPV with the least amount of money out of pocket. Welcome to my channel. This is Life of Acro. I'm Acro Brandon, and this is my life. So today we're building another 4S battery for the FPV. I recently did a video on how to build one, what I would call the proper way, with spot welding, and you need a spot welder, and you need nickel, and there's going to be a lot of other things that you would need to invest in. And I thought it would be interesting to see how I could build a battery for the cheapest amount possible. Now, although a little bit of soldering will be involved when building a battery the right way, I wanted to see what I could do to build this battery with soldering only, which is not my preferred method, but if you're on a budget but you have some decent soldering skills, how can we build this for the least amount of money? So all we're going to be using is some basic tape. I have gaff tape or duct tape, whatever one works for you. The exciting part about today's build is that we're going to see if I can get it done with this much solder, because that's all I have and the rest doesn't arrive until tomorrow. And we're just going to try and slap it together. Now, these cells are garbage. I've harvested them from a battery pack a long time ago. They do work. They only have like 10 amps of output, so it's definitely not enough for FPV, but I'll probably fly the drone with it really low just to see how they perform. But these are around 2 to 2200 milliamps. 10 amp output. These are LGE AMF. They're just garbage ass cells. They're good for maybe e-skate or an e-bike when you get enough of them in parallel, because then you can add all of that together. But as a 4S 1P type of battery, probably not a go-to, but perfect for today's demonstration. Let's get right into it. Now, if you didn't get an opportunity to watch the other video, I highly recommend it. It'll give you a quick layout of how the battery is going to go together, because I'm just going to skip through all of the small talk and we're going to get right to it. But you're going to need, for this combination here, to have your batteries one up, one down in this type of formation right here. And regardless of how I rotate this, it's not going to matter, but this would be, let's just say, my main power lead. This will be the main negative. This will be cell number 1, which goes underneath, comes back up as 2 to 3, which goes down and comes back up, and this will be cell number 4. Okay, so what we're going to do, and I talked about the other one, is just insulate 2 of the cells, so that way as they come together there's a little bit of a buffer. And I'm just going to wrap 2 of them. So I'm going to use gaff tape today because I have a bunch of this on hand. Gaffer's tape, we use it in the performance industry, and we just use it to, right, it has low stick, right, it's kind of like duct tape, but it pulls up easy and doesn't leave a bunch of residue. So if I wanted to, I could wrap the whole thing. I'm just going to wrap through the center, yeah, and then I'm going to roll, and then this will just give it a little layer between the 2 cells once I glue them. Okay, so I'm just going to do 2 like that so you can see, right, that there's just a little bit of a gap between the 2. It's probably going to be okay anyways. But you could use this thing called fish paper, which is in the other video. Remember, we're just here on a budget. Okay, and so I'm going to take this, I'm going to wrap it up, stack it up. This is what we say. Christmas song from Cirque du Soleil that I was in, that's still burnt into my head forever. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to glue it like this, right? 1 positive up, 1 negative anode up, and then I will glue these 2 together like so. So having a glue gun is nice. Okay, I recommend it. They're less than 10 bucks. Tons of purposes, right? So I take this, I'm going to line it up, and don't mind my cat who needs a snack in the background. If you hear her eating, him eating, it eating, I can never tell. Cats these days, they have so many ways to identify. Okay, so then this one, right, I know that if it's positive, negative, that this is going to be a negative over here, and that this positive is going to be up over here. So I'm going to glue this way this time. So if I did it like this, it might not work out the right way. So I just like to lay things out, okay? So we're here. Oh my God, I need glue already. So line it up, push the 2 together. And the reason I really like hot glue is because if you mess up, it's really easy to break apart and it won't tear and rip anything. Yeah, the only part that's going to be scary, and the thing that I'm always most cautious of, it would be soldering to the top here, because you don't want to have solder run off and then make a connection with the side of the can or anything like that. Right, that's how like short circuits happen. Okay, and then we're going to take this and then we're going to glue it one more time right on top. Right, positive, negative, in this order. Yeah, and these are just some crusty looking cells, huh? Doesn't matter where you're going to start, as long as number 1 number one always starts counting from the negative end first, okay? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll mess this up. I said it in the other video, right? Number one will never be the top, the main positive of the battery. If this is where it ends, this will never be number one. It's always the last, okay? So 1, I'm not going to be able to see 2. I'll put it up here. 3, and then 4, right? And then if you're feeling extra ambitious, you can put like a little positive, negative, right? Positive, negative, just so you have that laid out there for you. Now, since these were harvested cells, you can probably see that there's like these scrape marks right here where I had to pull off the old nickel, and then I used a Dremel to just lightly file those pieces off, being careful. Okay, so that's nice because what'll happen is that you'll actually be able to solder should stick right to that, which is good. So next, we're going to start to add some wire. If you have the little ring protectors here on the top, let me see if I have some more of those. I might have a few left. Oh, I got one maybe. So, so if you have these are super cheap. You can get these on eBay as well. They're just like an extra layer, really more so for when you're putting on nickel, like in case the nickel were to rub or come loose or something, it would have to rub through the paper before it could get to the sidewall of the can. For soldering, because it's going to be insulated with silicone wire, it should be good. And look, I'm actually out of them, so you know, that's this is what it is. We're not using this as insulation. You could probably put some strips of like tape under here, but you do need to be a little bit cautious because once we start to solder, right, it might make this really hot really quick, and we were going to try and minimize the amount of heat, but right, it's just an extra layer if you want to add that. Okay, so what are we going to do? So we need to connect number 1 to 2. Okay, so this positive is going to connect to this negative over here. Okay, so we're going to use different wire. You want silicone wire. Usually 12 gauge is what you're going to want for your higher output drone batteries, but because this thing only has 10 amps and I have this long string, I want to say this is like 14 gauge. What does it say? What are we going to do? All right, and here's what 12 gauge looks like. It's just a little bit thicker. Okay, but it's still pretty easy to move around. So, and it doesn't matter what color you use. So I'm going to solder this to the terminal here, and then it's going to connect over here. The nice thing is that all of this is negative, so you have a lot to use, but you're working on a tight spot right here as far as soldering onto the positive part. Okay, so you want to be very careful because if you short things from here to here, that's when things go wrong. Okay, so when you decide how much you want, right, I'm not going to try and push it all the way to the edge because I want it to be right in the middle of the pad. Okay, but what I'm also going to do is if I were just to keep it right in the pad, you can see at the edges right here, so we're probably only getting just like a little sliver right there. What I might do is create a little bit more so that way when I tin this end right here, I can smush the fibers down and get it to stick quicker. Okay, so I'm going to leave a little bit more out here on this side, and then when I go over here, I'll probably just snip it over here because it's all good, right? There's just tons of extra. So this is where I'm going to cut this right here. Let's see if that's the right size for me. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And since I know I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 to start, I'm going to cut 3 more just so I don't have to do it each time. All right, and I'm just going to use 1 as like a little bit of a template. Why 3? Because there are going to be 3 connections besides the main positive and negative. Okay, so I can snap out 3 of these. Okay, and so for the first one, I'm going to do this, and I want maybe like that. Right, so I'm going to use these to peel it off. Let's try the 14. Let's see how it goes. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, and see how that is. Right, so I'm going to come here. Yeah, that looks, you see that? That'll probably be pretty good. Okay, because then I'll be able to mush it down. And then when I do this side over here, right, I'm going to have a little bit extra. And the reason, and maybe I could have made these a little bit longer, but if you have a little bit more wire hanging out, it'll mush down once you get everything tinned, which is nice. If it's super nubby on the very end, you have to push down, and because the silicone that's encasing it is in the way, it may or may not work out to your advantage as much as you think it might. Okay, so we're on number 1, right? This is going to be my main negative. This will be number 4, my main positive. So I'm going to go up, I'm going to solder it to here and connect it to here. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to tin this up and get it hot. and it's going to get hot. So I highly recommend having a pair of, some needle nose pliers or something like that, so you can pick it up, twist it, and push it around, and then when you start to set it here on the battery, you'll be able to really mush it in there. Yeah, so hopefully this is enough, but we will see. Yes, I'm going to push this here. Yep, and then roll it around. Same thing over here. Get this hot. Yep, good. Yeah, that's how you know you get a nice hot iron too. It's just burning straight through. You could probably turn down just a teeny bit. Okay, so now we're going to start up here. Yeah, so we're going to come up here. Clean this off. I'm just going to get a nice little dollop. Okay, nothing too much. Don't want to be there too long. Not making too much. I always like to use my mouth to like blow air on it and try to cool it down. Yeah. And then now what we can do is come back, heat this guy up. Actually, I need to put some on this side over here too. So I don't know how far it's going to be. So I want to measure. It's going to be around here. Sometimes I like to get a little solder. Get the metal hot. And then turn it. Okay, a little clumpy, but always the best way to tell. Give it a tug test. If it doesn't come off, you're good. Okay, so first one's done. It's a little slop. It's not my best work, but whatever. It'll get better. So what I'm going to do is the top part of this battery, or whatever side of this battery you want to call it, at one time, so that it's not like sitting all weird. So it's going to go up and over, and then it would connect underneath here and it would go over here. So usually when you're making batteries like this, the wires would be in parallel anyways. So instead of kind of turning it over and having it leaning at me kind of weird, I'm just going to do the other side now, so that way when I turn it over, it's a little more solid because it's got those two little bars. So I'm just going to come in here. We're going to get our other pieces, put over here. I'm going to do the exact same thing once again. So I'm going to do it one more time. I'm just going to go super fast forward. Right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then there's the point where 2 and 3 connects together, right? Because it was 1, 2, 2 and 3 will connect with a piece like that. And then I'll come back to you. Okay, so that's taken care of, right? Nothing magical, a little sloppy over here. Definitely done better work, but everything is on there very secure. Always really good to check with the multimeter along the way to make sure that as you start to go, right? So let's see, where are we at? Number 1 was right here, right? Number 1 went to number 2. So if we check that, and you'll see as you go along the way, all right, that's 7.92. And then if you were to go from number 1 to number 3, which is up here, we got 12. And then if we go to the final little bit right here, right, positive to negative, we're at 16 because these were already holding at 4 volts. Yes. So now all we can do is start to put on the main leads, and that was the thing I have. So I have a connector here that's been laying around in my box. Luckily it happens to be about the right length, who cares? But now the question is, before we even put the balance leads on, right, we'll come back for that, but where do we want this wire to go? Do we want it to, you know, be soldered to the ends here and then come straight out the back like that lengthwise. I don't recommend just soldering it here and having it run out directly because it might break off. I always just hate having to take something and then instantly bend it up. So what I'm thinking I might actually do is take it, and then these will both go down, and then it'll just loop back up halfway and then come out, which will be the perfect length for this, and it just gives the wire a little opportunity to do something like that. So it's really up to you depending on how much wire you want to use. Do you want to like double back like this? I wouldn't pinch it, but I will tape it down so it doesn't move, or you could have it just run straight off and then come all the way out the back here, and then you'd have two on the tops. Yeah, I don't know. I'm 50-50 about it. It's up to you. So I'm going to solder this on for the last bits, and then we'll come back for the balance wires. Okay, so I got that on. I decided to go for the little loop back action like I was talking about, and then I just put a little hot glue here to kind of keep things from moving right now. I might actually put a little bit more. Depends. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my one layer of tape around, and I'm going to contour it and kind of get it to mold around here. And then I'm going to do the balance wires. I'll put that on top, and then I'll seal it up with a couple more layers of tape, right? Really on a budget. This kind of works. It's a little slop, or maybe it's just it's so much metal and I never solder to cells that it's just not as good as I would prefer. But, I mean, it's working. So let me tape this up, and then I'll show you the balance wires. Okay, so we have the balance lead here. If you watched the other video, I discussed how, because the way that they just luckily are red and black, but this is going to go to the main positive, and the one on the far side is going to go to the main negative. And then this one goes to the top, the positive of cell number 1, number 2, number 3, and then obviously number 4 would be the top one, which is where this one leads. So what I did in the last video is instead of just start soldering it on here, right, I got to do one side and the other side. And since this lead comes out to this lead, right, we're going to do the bottoms first, so that way we know how much slack to cut off on this wire when we do the top ones, okay? So what that means is that if number 1 is right here, or the battery negative, okay, the top of number 1 is right here, okay? But because this is connected, the top of the positive of number 1 is connected to the negative of number 2, I can actually put the balance lead over here, which is what I'm going to do. It doesn't really matter because they're both connected, so it doesn't matter what side you put it on, as long as it's 1 is connected to the bottom of 2, and this works good, okay? So I'm going to do number 1 and number 3 first and have it drape down the sides, and then we'll do the top and cut the rest off. Okay? Okay, so we're in the home stretch, right? Remember I said that this was the positive, this was the main negative, and we can see that the main negative is connected here. And then number 1 is at the bottom, and I'm going to bring it up the side. Number 3 I did down here, bringing that up the side. And then that way I knew where to trim these other wires so that they'd be the right length, so that they wouldn't be like curling and hanging out. That's something I learned from the last build. So now all I have to do is seal it off. What I'm going to do is actually just paint over all of it with some conformal coating, a little waterproof action for just in case. Just and then I'm just going to encase this thing in tape, because remember, this is like a dirty, cheap battery. But you could wrap it in a little bit of craft foam if you want to. I always use clear PVC tubing for batteries so that it has like a nice clean appearance to it and it's pulled in tight. But yeah, that's basically what you're going to do. So, and you're just going to seal it up as best as you can and insulate the crap out of it, and then you're going to call it a day. So one of the last things that you want to do when you have to put on your balance lead is to make sure that you've got it wired up properly. Okay, so you can just take these probes, and there's the little terminals back here on the back that you can actually reach with the probe. Yes, so if the far side was the negative, okay, and this is supposed to be the positive, right? We've got a reading of 16. Hopefully you can see that right there. Yeah, I'm gonna move it back just in case. Right, but really you would want to work your way up the battery, make sure you got it right, right? So from the first one, it's 3.96, and then we've got 7.93, and then we've got 12, and then we've got 16. Let's go. Yeah, and some change. So that allows me to know that I did get it right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because it's adding up perfectly. If you got it out of sequence, it would jump rapidly for you guys. Safety first. And just like that, I've got something that works that I am not too proud of. I probably wouldn't tell my friends and family about this, I think it's safe enough that you could actually travel with it. You might want to show up to TSA a little bit extra early just in case they have some questions for you. But the real question is how does it fly? And for that, you're going to have to stay tuned until I get my controller back from DJI. I will find out for you what kind of flight time and power I'm actually going to get out of this little battery. But hopefully this dirty tutorial gives you a little bit of an idea on how to solder a 4S battery together for your FPV instead of spot welding it. Once again, this is Life of Acro. I'm Acro Brandon, and this is my life. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free, drop those below. I'll see you all in another video.